Hello, everybody. Good evening. Thank you, everybody, for coming. New friends and old friends. Old friends, new friends.
Be old. Be the old friend.
It's really an honor to have everybody here. And I would like to thank HaShem for bringing everybody together in this room to hear words of Torah. And hear words of Torah from Tzaddik, Rabbi David Kalmus. I've been learning from David Kalmus for a few years. A mutual friend introduced us, and it's an honor really to have him here. His vessel, one of his vessels, is Zion Breslov. And it's a beautiful organization led by Rabbi Kalmus and his beautiful wife. And their avoda, their service in this world, is to teach and share the teachings of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. So Rabbi Kalmus has a very interesting personal story that I very much resonate with. I'll see how much of it he wants to go into tonight. It's up to him. And without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Rabbi David Kalmus.
So, first up, I want to say thank you to Bracha for bringing us all together. It's a big merit to use your own personal home as a makom, as a space to bring people together. A lot of people get confused about what Kedusha is. What is holiness? It sounds very abstract and vague. Rabbi Nachman's main student, he says that Kedusha is unity. Like Aaron and Cohen and the Kohanim, every single time that they come up and they bless the Jewish people with love, so they bless them with Kedusha, the Bracha says. But it's Ba'ahava, it's love. And only a person who's able to bless with love is able to bless. They say that if the Kohen cannot bless with love, he can't come up and do it. So, unity is Kedusha, and when the Jews received the Torah at Har Sinai, when we connected to God at the highest revelation that we ever did, so we were like one man with one heart. So anytime that you can bring Jews together, and all the more so, all different types of Jews. It's very, I was just telling my aunt and my uncle, this is my Aunt Meryl and my Uncle Michael, my whole childhood was with them. All my memories are with them and their kids. Their kids happen to live all in Miami now. It's just very surreal that, I don't know, is this your first class? With me? Yeah.
Well,
You've seen me in Queens?
Queens and online.
Online, right. No, I know that you've seen me online, but in person. It's cool that it's in Miami. It's cool that it's here in this space. And so I'm very thankful to be here, and I'm thankful that you guys came out. I hope everybody receives something special tonight. So I think, I tell my story a lot. I'll just quickly say that I didn't grow up wearing black and white. I didn't grow up aspiring to have a beard. I didn't grow up aspiring to have many children. Keeping Shabbat and eating kosher, these things are very foreign to me. And a lot of crazy stuff happened. A lot of wild things that I never could have predicted. And I've never been happier. So I'm just very thankful to be here. I had a lot of rough times through that period, and my aunt and my uncle were really there for me for a lot of it, so just to really appreciate it. It's sometimes you get to certain places and you forget what brings you there. But when a person does Hipodadut every day, and you spend time for an hour a day thanking HaShem for everything in your life, so one of the blessings is you don't forget anything. So, thank you for being here. I was recently, somebody texted me a report. Apparently there's some concerns about anti-Semitic riot acts Saturday. Sounded like something related to Nazism. to do certain things to Jewish people. So I saw a police report about it. And you would think, at this point, like we'd be done with all that, but it just doesn't go away. But I wanted to bring something a little bit deeper and maybe open that up a bit, just to show that no matter what's going on down here, it's never divorced from something good that's going on above. Sometimes it encloses itself, sometimes it hides itself, which is the story of this month of Adar, Purim, that it looks like everything is going the opposite way. It's all falling off the hinges. And yet, HaShem is using all of that to bring redemption to the Jewish people. And that's this month. This is the month I was born in. This is the month my baby boy was born in. Roy Nachman, I named him after Rabbi Nachman. This is the month that my mother was born in. And she survived scarlet fever when she was a little child. A lot of people didn't survive back then. My grandmother also survived scarlet fever when she was a kid. And my grandfather, the only survivor in his family from the Holocaust, he was also born in Adar. It's funny because in the English calendar, we were all born in different months. I was born in March, my mom was born in February, my grandfather was born in April. But in the Hebrew calendar, we were all born in Adar. And we all have survival stories, so it's pretty cool. There was once a figure, his name was the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov revolutionized Judaism. He brought a revival, and his entire effort and desire was that every single Jewish man and woman, no matter where they come from and no matter what their background is able to connect to Hashem from wherever they're at any time. And he saw a world in which Judaism was becoming exclusive for people who learned all the time, for people who came from wealthy homes. And the Baal Shem Tov, he had a very unique upbringing. He grew up without parents. He was an orphan. His parents died when he was 3. His father told him before he passed away, Sruli, it's Yiddish for Yisrael. Sruli, I want you to know these 2 things, and I want you to live with these 2 things the rest of your life, and that's it. 1, that you should have only fear of God and nothing else. And 2, that you should love every single Jewish man and woman, no matter what they've done in their life. And that was the beginning of the Baal Shem Tov's journey. And his parents passed away and grew up in an orphanage. And he actually was brought into a secret society of Kabbalists, Shem Tovs, healers, where they used names of Hashem to heal people. They pretended that they were not tzaddikim, that they weren't spiritually inclined people, but then they went around the city helping orphans and widows and people who were oppressed and suffering. And he was raised in that society, and very quickly they became keenly aware when he was a teenager that he was something different. And he ended up becoming the leader of this secret society. And then when he was about 30 years old, Eliyahu Navi came to him and told him that he has to stop hiding and he has to tell people who he is. And he refused. He said, I'm not doing that. Eliyahu said, you have to. The Jewish people need you. He said, no. And then finally he did. And very quickly after that, throngs of people from all over came to see the Baal Shem Tov. He was a wondrous, mesmerizing, charismatic figure, unlike which the world has ever seen. And he was Rabbi Nachman's great-grandfather. Rabbi Nachman grew up in his home in Mezhibush, Ukraine. And I want to tell you a story of the Baal Shem Tov. It's really beautiful. The Baal Shem Tov, before he passed away, he gathered around all of his students. And he told them all the purpose of their lives. Rabbi Nachman speaks about how the greatest tzaddikim in history, they are able to know the purpose of your life and the mission for which you're brought here. And by connecting to them, having hikashrut, attaching themselves to them, you're able to receive that mission, that task in life, which is beautiful. Obviously, everyone would like to know what I'm here for. You got so much stuff going on in our personal lives. If you just knew, oh, you're here for this, you'd be able to get through all of it. He told one of them that when he passed away, he wants him to spend the rest of his life going from town to town telling stories about me. He said, really? That's what you want me to do? He was a big Talmud Chacham. He was a tremendous scholar. He was was a genius. He could have been teaching, he could have been learning, he could have been helping Jews. Said, I don't want you to do any of that. I want you to just go to random towns in Europe, and I want you to start telling stories about the Baal Shem Tov. That's it. There's going to come a time when something's going to happen, and you're going to know that this job is done. And he didn't explain what he meant, but he said you're going to know. This person, his name was Yaakov Yosef. So after the Baal Shem Tov passed away, he started his mission. He starts going from place to place, telling stories of Baal Shem Tov. He had literally thousands and thousands of stories. And everyone was mesmerized and captivated by these stories. One time he heard about a person who was very wealthy, who lived in Turkey. And this person, he used to pay 10 rubles for anybody who told him a Baal Shem Tov story. It's very unusual to spend so much money to hear a story of the Baal Shem Tov. It's not even 200 years later when we revere him. It was right after he passed away. 10 rubles back then was a lot of money. So this person, Yaakov, he didn't have a lot of money because his Rabbi told him, I want you to go tell stories about me. How much money are you going to make doing that? So he thought to himself, you know what? This is a way for me to make a lot of money really quickly. This guy really wants to hear stories about my Rabbi. That's what my Rabbi wants me to do. I'm going to go to Turkey and tell him the story. So he travels all the way to Turkey from Ukraine, and he sees that he lives in like a castle. And he asks people around. This guy gets wind of the fact that this Jew is there, Yaakov. He wants to tell stories of Baal Shem Tov. He quickly runs out and brings him into his home and says, please spend Shabbat by me. It was Thursday night. So it was Thursday night like it is right now. And he said that I'm kind of tired right now. I think maybe if I go to sleep, I'll be able to tell you a really good story in the morning when I wake up. Went to sleep and I woke up, and he felt like, I don't know, I think he slept in late, and then Shabbat was coming, and he didn't have a chance to tell the story. So he's like, okay, I'll tell the story on Shabbat. Now Friday night comes in, and there's a whole huge table of people sitting around, standing, waiting to hear this story of the Baal Shem Tov, and he introduces him. This is one of the students of the Baal Shem Tov, and he's going to tell an amazing story right now. And he gets up in front of everybody, and he forgets everything he knows about his Rabbi. And he's getting very nervous and very embarrassed. And he's waiting and waiting. And then he said, you know what, maybe someone else here should tell a story first, and we'll come back to me. So the person thought it was a little unusual, but maybe he was nervous, he didn't know. He goes, okay, so someone else is going to tell a story. By the time they got back to him, he said, you know what, I think tomorrow, I'm a little tired, maybe tomorrow I'll tell you a really good story. So thankfully Shabbat is long. They were able to go to sleep and get up the next day. And he couldn't remember any stories of his Rebbe. And he didn't understand why he would forget the only thing that he knew. All of these stories. Shabbat comes to an end, and this person says to him, no, you want to tell me a story now? Maybe just me, not everybody else? He said, I would love to. I just can't. And he walks outside so upset at himself, so disappointed in himself. Doesn't understand what happened. The guy sees that he's embarrassed and he feels bad. He gives him money anyway, and he tells his driver, bring him back however far he needs to go. And as he's getting onto the horse carriage, he goes, I remember a story. You want to hear it? And he goes, are you kidding? Of course. So it comes off, and he says, okay, then this is amazing, because I never told this story to anybody, so you for sure don't know the story. So it's great. He's been spending money, like collecting playing cards, collecting all these stories. He's going to get a story he doesn't know. So he tells him this story. One time it was close to Pesach, and the Baal Shem Tov told them that during the week, preparation for Pesach, he took his 10 main students, and he said, I want you all to come with me. Nobody asked questions when he said anything. Even if it meant they had to leave their family, they didn't know when they were going to get back. The Baal Shem Tov said it, they went. They said, come, we need to go somewhere. They went on a horse and buggy. Before they knew it, they were in a totally different space, but it didn't look like such a Jewish area. It was a very unusual place. And by the time that they got out there, they were in a courtyard where there were big crosses everywhere, and it looked like they were having some type of Christian festival or celebration. And Easter is coming up. So, but they don't ask any questions. And all of a sudden, he brings them to a street. It's called the Street of the Jews. In many places, Jews lived in the Jewish quarter. They weren't allowed to live with non-Jews. They put them into a specific space. So here in this place as well, there was a street, and they see a door, and the Baal Shem Tov knocks on the door with all the students around him. Nobody answers. And the Baal Shem Tov knocks harder, says, "Come, let me in." All of a sudden, an old woman comes out. She opens the door. She said, "Get out of here." So the Baal Shem Tov said, "No, we have to come in." She said, "Do you want me to die? Do you want them to kill me? Please leave. You're Jewish. Get out of here. What are you doing here?" And he said, "You need to let me in right now." And he opens the door himself, and he walks in with his students. She quickly closes the door, locks all the locks, and says, "What are you doing here?" He says, "Can you do me a favor? Do you have any windows?" She said, "Yeah." She brings him to another room. He wants to take the curtain off the window. And she's like, "Please don't do that. Today is Easter. They pick one Jew every year, and they put him on a stake. And they kill him in front of everybody, and they all celebrate. If they don't see you, they won't do it. But whoever they see, they do it to. So please do not open that window." He said, "I have to." And he puts it back, and he tells his student, "I want you to go to the bishop who's going to do this whole service in front of all these people. And I want you to tell him that Yisrael ben Eliezer wants to speak to him." So again, he doesn't ask any questions. She said to him, "Please don't do this, you're going to die." But he's listening to his Rabbi. He runs out into the middle of the procession. He's in his full garb. He has a golden staff. And he goes up to him right as he's about to start, and he is in Hasidic garb. And he tells him, Bishop, I have to tell you something." And he said, "What do you want?" He said, "Yisrael ben Eliezer wants to speak to you." And his face went pale. And he said, "Not right now. Tell him I'll talk to him after." So he thought that was it. That was the end of the mission. He went back. Thank God nobody killed me. Comes back into the house. And he told the Baal Shem Tov what happened. And the Baal Shem Tov got angry. And he said, "Go back to him and tell him I want to speak to him right now." And now this woman who's living in this house is about to lose her mind. He said, please don't go back there. If you survived once, it was literally a miracle. You are going to be the one on the stake. Now he's really nervous, but he's going to listen to his Rebbe. He goes back to him. He's in the middle of the whole thing in front of all these people. And he says, "Bishop, the Baal Shem Tov says he needs to speak to you right now." He says, "Okay, 1 second." He stops the whole session. He has somebody come in for him. He says, "I need to go in the back." He went through the back. He was brought to the Baal Shem Tov. They spent the next few hours in a room together. After the Baal Shem Tov was done with that conversation with him, he said, "Okay, we can go home now." They went back, and they had no idea what happened.
Who went?
The Baal Shem Tov and his students went back to Ukraine. And this bishop, nobody saw him again. Okay. As he's telling this story, and we're going back now to the beginning, as he's telling this story to the Turkish man who's paying money to hear it, this new story he's never heard before, he starts to cry uncontrollably. And he's like, he's wondering like what moved him so much. He said, why are you crying? He said, "That's my story. I'm the bishop." And the Baal Shem Tov told me, because I said to him, he told me, "Listen, you're a Jew." And I didn't know. And he said, "Well, what can I do? How can HaShem ever forgive me? I've killed Jewish people, innocent Jewish people." He said, "I want you to go out on your own and do your best to be a good person. One day someone's going to come and tell you your story. When someone tells you your story, it means that HaShem forgave you. And now that I know that you told me this story, I know that HaShem finally forgave me." So this is one story about anti-Semitism, and obviously you can see there's a lot more going on than meets the eye. Rabbi Nachman used to say that through clapping and dancing, I'm going to break all the decrees. And he said that I conquered Breslov through dancing and clapping. So maybe we can do a little bit of a song now. round of applause for David. I'll be honest, my wife told me I'm tone deaf, so I'm so sorry for whatever just happened just now. I've never sang like that.
I said you're okay.
Yeah, it was okay. First time I heard that song, that's called the Lecha Dodi. So, Kabbalat Shabbat, Jews all over the world have been singing this song for hundreds of years. That is the way that the Breslovers sang it. And the first time that I heard that, I was in Uman. My first time in Uman, Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Nachman said, my whole mission is Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, Rosh means new, something in the beginning. Shana means year, but it also means old. Rabbi Nachman says, my path is ancient, and yet it's brand new. It's the one our ancestors walked. Everything that Rabbi Nachman said was very mysterious. But I remember when I was in Uman, and you have thousands and thousands of people who are full-blown Hasidim. You have Sephardi, you have Ashkenazi, you have people who are religious from birth, you have Baalei Tshuva. You have totally secular people there with tattoos and earrings. You have every type of Jew in one place singing the same song. It's literally the most beautiful thing in the world. And they were playing that song, and I don't know why HaShem just hit that song for me, because I heard all the other Breslover songs before I got there. I thought I knew them. And they played this one. And I remember when we were singing it all together, I just started to cry. And I think part of the reason was because I know that song. I had this feeling when I was there like I'd been there before. And it's funny because growing up, my uncle's mother, my grandmother, her name is Sarah Esther, Aleva Shalom. I actually had a dream of her recently. I've had a few dreams of her since she passed away 2 years ago, and she's always with my Aunt Ruthie, which is Meryl's mother, which is pretty wild, because I don't remember them together so much at all. And I think I only saw them together when I was very little, before I could remember. And every single time I see my grandmother in my dream, she's with Aunt Ruthie and they're eating together, or playing Marzan or something. And I asked my dad, I texted him, I said, were her and Aunt Ruthie close? And my dad said, yeah, they were inseparable. So I said, I guess whoever you're close to down here, you're still close to above. I brought my son with me to Uman this year for Shabbat Hanukkah. Rabbi Nachman says, if you bring your son to me before he turns 7, I'll make sure I bring him down the aisle to get to the chuppah. So my wife gave me permission to bring my son, 6 years old. That was a really cool, fun trip to bond together with him. I've been singing him all of these songs. I probably said Rabbi Nachman every day of his life. And I don't think he ever had any context for it, besides like my dad's obsessed with Rabbi Nachman and Breslov, and that's it. And then all of a sudden he comes to a place where everybody's obsessed with Rabbi Nachman and Breslov, and he got to hear everybody singing all these songs together, and you could see his eyes. It was like, just to see his face, it was unforgettable. But I remember we got to where Rabbi Nachman's buried at Sion, and we sat down there. It's a very special place. And we started learning Rabbi Nachman's stories. Towards the end of Rabbi Nachman's life, which he was very young when he passed away, he was 8 and a half. He had tuberculosis for the last 3 years of his life. He probably survived 3 years longer than he should have. And he told his students, you're not waking up from my Torah that I'm teaching you, so I'm just going to have to start telling you stories. That sounds like a huge downgrade. Can you imagine? You've been going to one of the greatest spiritual masters in the world. He's teaching you in-depth lessons, hoping you're going to connect and elevate. And he says, you know what? Let's do bedtime stories. I don't know if this is working out. But actually, those stories are even deeper than the lessons. And me and my son have been learning those stories for years. And I still, with my kids, every night before they go to sleep, we learn these stories together. And as soon as we started the story, my son looks at me and he says, Abba, I feel like I've been here before. And I was just so emotional, because I had the same feeling when I was there. And the world is very mysterious, you know, our lives are very mysterious. There's a lot more going on than we think that there is. And I think that's part of the reason why we suffer so much, because we only get like one side of the coin. We only see one part of the picture. You learn from that story, the Baal Shem Tov, that just hearing your story can save your life. Just hearing your story can heal you, whatever you've been through. Purim is coming up, and we read Megillat Esther. So the word Esther comes from the word Hester, which means hidden, concealed. The word Megillah comes from the word Gilui, which means revealed, to reveal. So you have Megillat Esther, it means to reveal that which is hidden. It's an amazing thing. Megillat Esther, revealing that which is hidden. What is that? It's your story. There's a halacha, there's Jewish law. It says you're not allowed to read the Megillah mafreya. Mafreya means out of order. If you read it out of order, you're not yotze the mitzvah. No matter how long you spend reading it, no matter how many people are there, no matter how big of an event it is, if you miss one letter, you get one letter wrong, you wait too much time in between, you went out of order, you haven't completed the mitzvah. Because the only way to heal from hearing the story of Megillat Esther is to hear it from the beginning till the end. And so too in our lives. We go through so many different phases. Sometimes we're riding high, usually when we're children. And then we grow up and we go through so much stuff that you can't possibly imagine, that you could never even tell to another or enunciate from your own heart. And then hopefully at the end you get to kind of see it all come together. But the only way to really see it come together is from the beginning until the end. And if you take out one part, even the bad parts, if you miss one piece, even the crisis that you went through, you won't heal from the story. You won't be yotze the mitzvah, the Megillat Esther. Because you have to hear your story from the beginning until the end. Baal Shem Tov has an unbelievable sod. He says, Lemafreya literally means to read it in retrospect. Like when you owe somebody money and then you pay them afterwards. So the Baal Shem Tov says you can't read it like it was in the past, or you're not yotze Megillat Esther. You have to read it like you're living it right now. That's the only way you can experience this Esther, this Megillah, this story. So who are the figures in the story? You have Mordechai. His name is a combination of two words, mor and dror. Mor is the Hebrew for the word myrrh. You guys know the spice myrrh, it's the myrrh spice. Dror is Hebrew for free, means freedom. But it also means pure. So pure spice, pure myrrh is Mordechai. And he represents the part of every single Jew that's pure. That no matter what you've been through in your life, whether you are living true to who you are, or whether you have been hiding it for a very long time, whether you know that part of you or you don't know that part of you, that part of you can never be touched. That part of you is pure. That part of you is a tzaddik. That's Mordechai. And he's the one who they would call your conscious, or in Buddhism they would call your mind's eye. Right? He is your inner still voice, Mordechai, the wise one inside of you, who already knows the answer. And then you have Esther. Esther is very different than that. Esther is hiding the fact that she's Jewish. She doesn't tell anybody she's Jewish. She herself doesn't necessarily know she's Jewish. But she's as Jewish as it gets. And together, Mordechai and Esther bring the Geula. They bring the redemption. But it's interesting because Rabbi Nachman says, but it's called Megillat Esther because she's the primary redeemer. It's one thing to be a tzaddik. It's special. It's great. Everyone needs you. But the real hero of the story and the real hero of your life is the one who's hiding, the one who's broken, the one who doesn't want to tell anybody who they are, the one who won't even let themselves know who they are. When she says it though, and she says, I'm a Yehudi, I'm a Jew, she saves the whole world. We live in a time, obviously, Judaism is not the coolest thing in the world. It's not in the forefront of people's minds. You need tremendous merit to even come in contact with it. You know, fortunately, my aunt grew up with a lot of Jewish things. She was like very fluent in a lot of things I didn't even know about. But I wasn't. And most people in our generation are not. And they're knowing less and less about who they are. And, you know, I just spoke at Rutgers, I don't know if it was yesterday, this whole trip has been a blur for me. I booked like eight speaking engagements in like 7 days. So it's been like one big, long blur. But you could see that with every generation, people are becoming less and less secure about who they are, and they're in more pain for no reason. You know, you saw like in past generations, there was a pain, but it usually came from circumstances. We grew up dirt poor. It's not usually like that now. It's just like, I don't know who I am. And in the world right now, especially in Western society, this is considered like the greatest mila, that we don't label you. We don't tell you who you are. We let you find out yourself. So we don't want to say you're a boy, because you might identify as a girl. We don't want to say you're a girl, because you might identify as a boy. We don't want to say either, because you may not identify as any of them. It sounds amazing. But on the other hand, it leaves a person without an identity. The Torah teaches that the most painful experience in the world is not to know who you are. The word galut, or exile, means the exile of one's self. The geula, the redemption, which is the only difference is one letter, it's the aleph, the Lubavitcher Rebbe says. It means to reveal who you are. Megillat Esther. What's stopping Esther from telling everyone she's Jewish? What's stopping Esther from herself knowing she's Jewish? So you have two figures in your life who are giving you a hard time. One of them, his name is King Achashverosh. So the Torah speaks about him in a kind of ambivalent way. On the one hand, he was a terrible person, and he killed his own wife, and he was pretty sick. But on the other hand, he never forgot a good thing that a person did for him. He wrote it all down, which is how the Jews were saved in the end. And then on the other hand, you had Haman, a failed artist, failed barber, who ends up rising to fame, becoming the Mishneh Lamelech, becoming the second to the king, and making a decision to have the first Holocaust in history. It was the first time in history anybody had an idea to wipe out all the Jews in one moment, in one time. Usually it was a slower process. Haman was the first one to have that idea. It's interesting because Adolf Hitler actually was a failed artist. A lot of people don't know that. When he was younger, he was a failed artist. They know him from like jail, when he wrote Mein Kampf on. But he actually was like that also. There's a lot of similarities between them. But Haman represents just pure evil. You know, just pure negativity. He has no mercy, he has no rachamim. There's nothing redeeming about him. So who are these two figures in your life? You usually have obstacles in your life that are obvious and ones that are not so obvious. You have challenges that you go through. One which you can't stop thinking about, which is the bane of your existence, and you would pay anything to get rid of it. So that's like Haman. And then you have Achashverosh, that he's a little bit more subtle than that. He's a little bit more vague, a little bit more ambiguous, but he's also keeping you from the goals of your life. He's also keeping you from connecting to who you are. They're working together. It's very interesting because in this entire story of Purim, it's the only story in the entire Torah where Hashem's name doesn't come up one time. The only time, not once. So the sages teach that every time it says King Achashverosh, it's speaking about King Achashverosh. But whenever it says Hamelech, the king, it's actually speaking about Hashem. So if you go back and you read the story knowing that, it's quite fascinating. Comes Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, to bring it even deeper, and says that in truth, be'emet, whether it says king or King Achashverosh, is always speaking about Hashem. That means that all the challenges in our life, even though it's unfathomable, is coming from the source of existence, the one who loves you more than anything, who created the entire world just for you, that you guys should be close, that you should know each other, that you should connect. And that's the story of Purim. And you need to hear this whole story from the beginning until the end. And only then it's going to heal you. Only then you're going to find solace in your life. Then you're going to be yoked to the mitzvah of Purim. You won't be mafreya. You'll hear it from the beginning until the end. In Kabbalah, they explain that Nisan is in some ways the first month of the year, and Adar is the last month of the year. Nisan is the month of Pesach. Pesach's Geula, it's a revealed redemption. You see Hashem in everything. In Kabbalah, they explain this represents the beginning of history. Right? All beginnings are exciting. It's revealed to you. Whenever you do something new for the first time, it's thrilling, it's exciting, you feel like this is gonna change my life. I started a diet, man, I'm gonna lose so much weight. I started a new business endeavor, I'm on fire, I'm spending hours doing it, it's great. And then all of a sudden, you wake up one day, and then you're like, you know what? That Reese's Pieces looks pretty good right now. You have it, and all of a sudden you get cooled off. You're like, you know what? This diet's a little too extreme. I don't really know if I could do this. It's too much. You start to slow down. But the beginning is always this unbelievable, powerful energy. It's a revealed, redemptive energy. That's Pesach. That's the beginning of Jewish history, when we became a nation. And in Kabbalah, they explain that the end of history, which is where we're at right now, which doesn't mean, like Christians say, that there's some type of apocalypse and everyone is going to die, but that we're going to all experience a shift in consciousness. That right now, people are fighting for their honor, for their glory, for their money, and the Rambam says in the future, we will stop doing that. Because everyone's going to know exactly who they are, and once you know exactly who you are, you don't feel the need to oust anybody else. You see it all as one beautiful picture. That's why it says that the Mashiach is going to turn all weapons into, what do they call those? Plowshares? Yeah, plowshares. I don't know what that is, but it means it's not a weapon anymore. Right? Rabbi Nachman said how foolish are the nations of the world, that they use technology to kill each other, when technology was made to bring people together. And he said that the Mashiach will bring the whole redemption without lifting or shooting one bullet. He's going to do the entire thing with his mouth. That's our technology. It's the Jews' technology. We use our mouth. But we bring people together. That's what we're supposed to be doing. So the end of history is like Purim. So if you don't know this story in and out, you don't know your story. But this story is different. This story, you don't see Hashem anywhere in this story. He's nowhere to be found. Rabbi Nachman said in the final generation, before the coming of the Mashiach, it's going to be a hastar shebetoch hastar, a concealment within a concealment. That's actually where the name Hester comes from. Esther's name comes from that pasuk. Aster aster panai. On that day, I'm going to hide myself doubly. So what does it mean I'm going to hide myself doubly? Rabbi Nachman has a tremendous novelty. He says it's one thing when Hashem hides from you in your life, that's already painful enough. But he says it's actually a step up. You're lucky if you get to that point that you realize that Hashem's hiding from you. He says in the final generation that Hashem will be hiding the fact that He's hiding from you. And therefore nobody will actually know that Hashem's in the world. Nobody will know that Hashem's in their life. This is even more painful because there's no pain. Nobody even realizes anything's wrong. People realize something's wrong, but they attribute it to people, places, and things, to circumstances, to health, to wealth, to status, to failed dreams, to achievements. Everyone has their own litany of problems, and really there's only one problem, that Hashem's hiding. And that's Purim. But ultimately, somehow, through this entire concealment, it's the concealment itself that reveals you. On Purim, we're supposed to dress up. Everyone dresses up. So on the one hand, that's the concealment part, right? You're hiding who you are. But on the other hand, when you dress up, you notice that you could just be exactly who you are. Right? It's like when people get drunk. Why do they drink? I used to drink a lot. Why was I drinking so much? Because I felt like I could be me now. I don't have to hide anymore. I'm not worried. Right? I have a mask on. If anybody wants to know why I'm acting like that, I'm drunk. But really, it was just me. So why in Purim we wear a mask? So on the one hand, we get to hide ourselves, which is like the times right now. Hashem's hiding, our soul is hidden, and on the other hand, by wearing the mask, by wearing the costume, we get to reveal who we really are. This whole story is so mysterious. It's this spectrum and this artwork, this master play of concealment and revelation and concealment and revelation. And it's only when things look like they're never gonna get better, it's at that moment that the whole thing flips. Rabbi Nachman used to say that the greatness of HaShem is that no matter what's happened in your life, in one moment everything can flip. That's the greatness of HaShem. And we see this in Purim. In one moment, Esther says, I'm Jewish. Then the whole thing flips. And Haman and Achashverosh lose their positions. And Mordechai and Esther become king and queen. And that's us. So the question is how we get there, though. It's a nice story, but there's probably, 15 people here, which is great. But there's millions of people who need to hear the story. How are they ever going to hear the story? Rabbi Nachman said that when my great-grandfather came to the world, he brought a fire. But when he passed away, the fire went out. He said, I also brought a fire to the world. But Rabbi Nachman said, but my fire is not going to go out. My fire is going to burn until the coming of Mashiach. He says something very interesting, that Mordechai raises Esther. The sages teach that Mordechai was married to Esther. I thought he was her uncle, but they're married. So which one is it? So I just want to tell you a little bit about when I realized I was a Jew and how it happened for me. And I hope that with this you'll be able to take something practical about how do I find Hashem in my life, how do I connect to Hashem in a way that's unique and individual to me. It's not dogma, it's not something fanatical, it's just whoever you are all the way, okay? During the Holocaust, Rabbi and secular people were the same. Once people want to kill you, it doesn't matter who you are. Your status goes away. Your income goes away. The only thing that's left is that you're a Jew. So there's a story about this great Hasidic Rabbi who in the camp, they shaved his head, they gave him the whole uniform, and they put him in the same bunk as a secular Jew. We'll call him Bobby. And Bobby and this rabbi became best friends. But Bobby didn't really care, it didn't really mean anything to him that he was a rabbi. In fact, he thought it was kind of like a joke. So he used to call him by his last name. Didn't call him rabbi, didn't call him Rabbi, he called him, we'll call it, let's say his last name is Solomon. Solomon. So he goes, no, Solomon, what are we going to do? What happened to us? Solomon says it's going to be good, everything's going to turn around. one day the Nazis come into their bunk and ask them to come outside. They all come outside, and he says that you're all going to go to the woods right now, and we're going to dig a ditch together. So they all dig this very, 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 very large ditch. And then the Germans tell them, now, whoever can jump from one side to the other side without falling in the ditch, they will continue to live. And whoever doesn't jump, whoever lands in the ditch, this will be the last moment of your life. They said, as soon as we shoot, we're all going to jump. So this secular Jew says to the Rabbi who's next to him, he said, I'm not doing it. There's no way in the last moment of my life I'm giving them this sick satisfaction that I'm going to try to jump this Olympic-sized ditch. Even a person who did this professionally couldn't jump from one side to the other. He said, I'm not jumping, I'm just staying right here. And he said up until this point, the Rebbe never really spoke to him like a rabbi. He never spoke to him very assertively. He always spoke to him just like a friend. He never said, you should call me anything, no, nothing. But at this moment, he looks him in the eyes, and he tells him, Bobby, when they say jump, I want you to hold on to me, and I want you to jump as high as you possibly can. And because of the fervor in his eyes when he said it, the conviction in his eyes, it was a stressful time period, he didn't know what was going on. He never saw him speak to him like this. All of a sudden the Germans start screaming out, jump! And next thing you know, you hear bullets rifling off. Bullet, 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 bullet. And all of these people are in the ditch because you can't make it from one side to the other. But then this rabbi and Bobby open their eyes, and they're both on the other side. They had leaped from one side to the other. And Bobby said for the first time, Rabbi, how did you do that? That was impossible. And the rabbi said to him, me? That's not a question. I closed my eyes and I held on to the coattails of my ancestors. And they carried me. You, that's a question. How did you make it? He said, that's also not a question. I held on to you. I had my own little type of mini Shoah. I suffered from depression for most of my life since I was 10 years old. I used to have one episode every year, usually during the winter time. I did a really good job of hiding it so that nobody really knew, until my mom came to me one day, usually at some point after it's been months, and said, David, are you blue? And I would start to cry, and she would send me to a therapist. I worked through it, and then it would happen again, and we did it again, and did it again. But then all of a sudden you become an adult, and you have all this pressure to go to college, and to succeed, and to make money, to get married. And then on top of all of those stressors, I found HaShem in my life. So most people don't talk about this because they want you to grow spiritually. But actually, it's a very, very stressful time period to transition from growing up living one way completely to actually taking on a whole different lifestyle. It's very, very stressful. And there's a lot of friends that you have. It's weird to speak now. What are you going to talk about? Family members, we don't know how to interact. Your parents don't know really what happened with you. And it's like impossible to explain it. And you just want to scream from the mountaintops how great this thing is, but there's no way for anyone to understand. And so all of it together, it just led to me reaching the worst depressive episode of my life. At this point I was married, I had 2 little kids, and I was on a couch for 3 years. I was crying every day, just talking about what a bad person I am, what a horrible father I am, what a horrible husband I am. Thank God I had a lot of support from my parents, from my aunt, from my uncle, who spoke to me all the time and encouraged me, everything's going to get better. You're going to find the right medicine combination, you're going to find the right therapist, you're going to find the right help. You just got to keep pushing it, you're going to get there. And my wife, just my hero, comes from a foreign country, moves to a place, she doesn't even understand why Jews live in America. She grew up Zioni, so they're in Israel. But she grew up, her parents this is the place for the Jews, this is the place to live, not even for religious reasons, just a dream. She's here by herself, without her family, with me, just comatose for 3 years, taking care of her 2 little kids, no money, no support. My parents are paying for everything just to keep going until I get better. And it's lasting weeks, into months, into years. My wife's family has no history of mental health stuff. She's totally unfamiliar with any of these things. And, my rabbi told me at the time that you're so lucky. I don't know any woman who would stay with you. And he didn't mean it in a mean way. He wasn't trying to say it in a way to hurt me. He was just trying to help me to appreciate that I have blessings in my life. I have gifts in my life. But at some point I couldn't take it anymore. The struggle, the suffering. I ended up even doing crazy things like getting electric shock therapy. They said 80% of people get better from this. I wasn't one of the 80%. I lost memory for a couple of years. Something very interesting though. All the Torah that I learned ever since I became Baal Tshuva, I didn't forget any of it. I just forgot everything else. So that was a pretty wild experience. Baruch Hashem, most of my memory came back, some of it's gone. And I didn't get better. And that's last ditch, that's the horror movie, that's nothing else works. Most people even know it still exists. And it didn't help me. And so I checked myself into a psych ward. And I'm in my late 20s, I'm sitting there in a hospital gown, and I'm thinking about what happened to my life. Growing up, I had so much hope and dreams about what I could do with my life. I felt in general, I'm a decent person, I'm smart, I care about people. How did everything just fall off the rails? And not a little bit, but this is hell. I can't imagine this being any worse. And then I made a decision. The only thing that was really keeping me going was Rabbi Nachman's teachings. Every day I was reading them, and it was giving me hope and inspiration, despite the fact that I was totally hopeless. And then I realized I was doing something. I was learning what he says, but I never actually did what he said. I was learning all of his wisdom, but I never actually practiced his advice. One thing that he says is that every single Jew has a very close relationship with Hashem. That in essence, he's your best friend, but he's waiting for you to be his. How do you connect to somebody? How do you draw close to somebody? How do you cultivate a deep relationship? You speak to them, right? You guys know, most of you are married or have been married. If you don't speak to your partner, so then essentially it's like you're not married, but you're married, right? You have the ketubah, you have the contract, you had the event, you guys celebrated it. But for sure, when you go to sleep at night, you don't feel like you're together because you're not speaking. But then when you speak, you feel so close. You feel so connected. Speech is what connects you. Rabbi Nachman says, do you know why people feel so far from Hashem? Because nobody talks to him. Because you don't talk to him, you don't feel close to him. How could you feel close to someone you don't speak to? So me, on the one hand, I believed in Hashem, but he felt very far from me. And I didn't understand how I could suffer so much. how can a person suffer so much? If God doesn't exist, then this makes a lot of sense. But if he does, then this doesn't make any sense. And I'm thinking to myself as I'm sitting there, what is one thing that I haven't done? Rabbi Nachman says the best thing that you could possibly do in your life is spend 1 hour a day talking to HaShem like he's your best friend from the bottom of your heart. I never did that. He calls it hibodedu. It comes from the word boded, to be alone, to be secluded. In Israel during this whole COVID period when everybody was separated, it's bidud. Right? It means isolated, but this is self-inflicted. You choose to be isolated for good reasons, for positive reasons, to be alone with Hashem. I never did that. And I said, you know what? Every single thing that I've tried to do in my life, I've tried to do myself. I've tried to heal myself. I've tried to work myself. I've tried to make it work with my wife myself. I've tried to get better myself. And I won't relinquish control. I can't give up my own sense of what should, could, needs to be. And I said, you know what? If you really do exist, then you're going to have to help me. You are going to have to save me in every aspect of my life. My health, my financial situation, my marriage, me as a father, me as a son. Everything is broken. I've tried to fix it, and it ended me in a psych ward. So if you really are going to help me with all of these things, I'm going to need to give you time so you can hear everything I'm going through. How much time? For sure, at least an hour. I made a promise then and there. I'm going to start to speak to you for 1 hour every single day. I said, if you help me, and I don't just live, but I actually thrive. I don't just survive, but I live a really good life. Somehow, like Purim, this whole thing flips. I said, I promise I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to help other Jewish people do the same. And that's why I'm here with you guys right now. Hashem held up his end of the bargain, and I'm trying to hold up mine, sometimes successfully, sometimes not so successfully. That's why I put myself through this craziness of 8 classes in 7 days on no sleep, because I have to fulfill my neder. But that story I told you before about the rabbi and the secular Jew, Bobby. So Bobby is like me. You know, I don't think much of rabbis, I don't think much of Judaism, I don't think much of religion. And so I don't speak of it with any reverence. And then all of a sudden I come close to it, I come in contact with it, and I continue to speak like that. But then all of a sudden my life is on the line, and I have no other options. And there is this figure who for some reason has never left me, who continues to help me through all of it, who never leaves my side, who at the moment that it looks like it's going to go to extinction and oblivion, he says, listen, I want you to close your eyes and I want you to jump as high as you possibly can. And that was Rabbi Nachman for me. And sometimes it takes hell to get you to close your eyes and jump as high as you possibly can. And that's Purim. And that's 2023. And that's all the things that we're going through right now. This is the perfect time, the perfect situation to be able to reveal who we truly are and to let people into our lives that want to help us, to let Hashem into our life, to develop a real relationship with Him. Because ultimately, Esther is raised by Mordechai. Esther is the redeemer of the Jewish people. But she does it because she lets Mordechai raise her. Esther doesn't want to tell anybody she's Jewish. Mordechai says, you have to tell them now. Esther said, I'm not going to do it. Mordechai said, fine. If you don't do it, somebody else will do it. Now, I don't know about you, that's not the most motivating speech you ever hear, right? Can you imagine? Someone comes up to you and says, the whole world is riding on you telling everybody this thing. But if you don't do it, anyone else can do it. It's a crazy story. It's like, you know, she's like, okay. What was Mordechai trying to say? every single person has the capacity to be the hero of their own story. Now Hashem will never leave us up to fate, and no matter how many people want to kill us and have tried to, even up until today, they'll never succeed, because just like Hashem is eternal, so are we. So he'll never leave us up to fate. We're always going to be here. But on the other hand, do you want to be Esther, the one that reveals who she is, or do you want to be Esther, the one that remains hidden? That's really our choice in life. This thing is going to go good. Hashem's going to fix it. We're going to get to a beautiful place. The world is going to come to a state of peace and unity and love and a higher level of understanding and compassion. But do you want to be Esther or not? That's up to you. If you don't, someone else is going to do it. So B'ezrat Hashem, I really hope that everybody moving forward takes the time to try to find a Mordechai. Whether it's Rabbi Nachman, whether it's Lubavitcher Rebbe, whoever you feel speaks to your soul, someone who you feel like connects to you, someone who understands you, someone who knows you. Because ultimately, the only way to move from the place that you're in is you need someone to raise you. And the word raising in the Megillah is actually the word that comes from emunah, uman, to raise. So what are you being raised in? You're being raised in faith. When most people think about faith, they think about faith in God, right? Once, Rabbi Nachman was giving a lesson to his students. And he said to them, to the degree to which you lack faith, to that degree everything in your life feels heavy. So Rav Natan, Rabbi Nachman's main student, he got very flustered. And he started becoming settled because he thought about how everything in his life was hard. His relationship with his spouse was hard. His economic situation was hard. His learning was hard. His praying was hard. Everything was hard. Does that mean I don't have faith? And he got up, which is very unlike him, which is very unlike any Hasidim, in the middle of the rabbi speaking. And he said, are you saying I don't have faith? Are you saying I don't have emunah? If there's one thing I know for sure that I have, I believe in Hashem. And Rabbi Nachman said back to him, it's true, but you don't believe in yourself. This lesson that Rabbi Nachman gave, he did not say belief in Hashem. To the degree that you believe in Hashem, to that degree, everything in your life will be lighter. He said to the degree to which you believe. The tzaddik is not there just to help you believe in Hashem. He's also there to help you believe in yourself. Haman is a descendant of Am